The chair at the front row had a name tag on it, but the person it was meant for never came. And no one in the room realized that everything Grandma left behind depended on that one empty seat. My name is Emily Carter. I'm 29 years old, and until recently, I worked as a junior accountant at a small insurance company in Chicago. Numbers had always made sense to me. People not so much. And if you had asked me 3 weeks ago who the most complicated person in my life was, I would have answered without hesitation. My grandmother, Margaret Carter. But now that she's gone, I realize the complicated part wasn't her. It was us. Grandma. Margaret lived in a small brick house at the edge of town for almost 40 years. It wasn't fancy, just 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that always smelled like cinnamon, and a backyard with an old oak tree she refused to cut down. The strange thing was, our family acted like she didn't exist. My father visited maybe twice a year, my uncle less than that, and my cousin Daniel, he hadn't spoken to her in almost 10 years. Still, when the call came from the hospital, everyone suddenly cared again. Grandma passed away on a rainy Tuesday morning. Peacefully, the nurse said. But the moment the news reached the family group chat, something changed. People who hadn't visited her in years suddenly started asking questions. Did she leave a will? Who's handling the house? Did she have savings? It made my stomach twist. Because I remembered the last time I saw her alive. 2 weeks before she died, I visited her after work. She looked smaller than I remembered, but her eyes were still sharp. Emily, she said while pouring tea, do you believe people regret things too late? I shrugged. Sometimes. She nodded slowly. Then she said something strange. There will be a seat at my funeral. I laughed awkwardly. Grandma, that's a little dramatic. But she didn't laugh. Make sure it's there. A seat. Yes, she said quietly. With his name on it. At the time, I didn't ask who she meant. I assumed she was talking about Daniel, her favorite grandson, the one who stopped visiting after a huge fight years ago. But I didn't push. Because with Grandma, if she wanted to tell you something, she would. Eventually, the funeral was held 5 days later. A small chapel downtown, gray skies, light rain, and the kind of silence that makes everything feel heavier. About 20 people came. Family members, 2 old neighbors, a nurse from the hospital, and me. I arrived early to help the funeral director set things up. That's when I saw it. The chair, front row, right beside my father, and on it, a small white card. Daniel Carter. My stomach dropped. You actually put the name tag? The funeral director asked. She requested it, I said quietly. He nodded. All right then. But as the guests arrived, whispers started immediately. My uncle leaned toward my father. Is Daniel coming? Dad shook his head. Not likely. Then why the seat? I didn't answer. Because deep down I already knew. Grandma wasn't reserving that chair for respect. She was testing something. The service began at 2 p.m. Soft music filled the chapel. People stood, sat, listened to the pastor talk about kindness and family. But every few minutes, someone glanced at the empty chair. And every time they did, the room felt a little heavier. Halfway through the service, my phone vibrated. A message from Daniel. My heart jumped. I opened it quickly. It read, I heard Grandma died. Is the funeral today? I stared at the screen, then typed back, yes. It started 30 minutes ago. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then came his reply. I'm out of town. Can't make it. That was it. No apology. No regret. Just a message. I looked at the empty chair again, the one with his name on it, and suddenly Grandma's words echoed in my head. There will be a seat at my funeral. The service ended an hour later. People offered condolences, hugs, awkward smiles, but the empty chair never moved. It stayed there, silent, waiting. After the burial, the family gathered in the chapel's small meeting room. That's when the lawyer arrived, a tall man in a dark suit carrying a briefcase. Good afternoon, he said. My name is Mr. Harrison, and I handled Margaret Carter's estate. Everyone leaned forward slightly, because this was the moment they had been waiting for. The will. Mr. Harrison opened the folder slowly. Before we begin, he said calmly, there is one condition your grandmother left regarding the inheritance. My uncle raised an eyebrow. A condition. Yes. The lawyer looked around the room. Then his eyes stopped at the empty chair. The primary beneficiary must have attended the funeral service. The room fell silent. My father frowned. What does that mean? Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. Your mother left the majority of her estate to one person. Everyone leaned forward. Even I did. And then he said the name. Daniel Carter. My uncle laughed in disbelief. Daniel. The one who didn't even show up. Mr. Harrison nodded. Yes. Dad looked irritated. So what happens now? The lawyer closed the folder slowly. and said something that made the entire room freeze. The inheritance depended on him being present. He glanced once more at the empty chair, and he wasn't. But that wasn't the worst part, because the next thing the lawyer said changed everything. We thought we knew about Grandma, and about Daniel. The inheritance depended on him being there, and he wasn't. The room fell into a heavy silence after Mr. Harrison said those words. My father leaned back in his chair, rubbing his forehead in frustration. "So you're telling me," he said slowly, "that my son missed the funeral, and because of that, he loses everything?" The lawyer didn't answer immediately. Instead, he calmly adjusted the papers in front of him. Margaret Carter was very clear, he said. Daniel Carter would inherit the house, the savings account, and the investment portfolio only if he attended her funeral service in person. My uncle let out a bitter laugh. "That's ridiculous." But Mr. Harrison shook his head. "No, sir, it's perfectly legal." Then he added quietly, "And she had her reasons." Everyone started talking at once. Why Daniel? He never visited. He ignored her for years. But I sat there silently, because I knew something they didn't. Grandma had never stopped talking about Daniel. Not once. Even when he stopped visiting. Even when the rest of the family stopped mentioning his name. My father finally turned to the lawyer. "So what happens now?" Mr. Harrison folded his hands. "In the event Daniel Carter does not attend the funeral service." He paused for a moment. "The inheritance is transferred to the secondary beneficiary." My uncle leaned forward quickly. "Which is—" The lawyer looked down at the will again, then raised his eyes. "Emily Carter." The room exploded. "What?" My father stared at me like he'd never seen me before. "Emily," he said. I felt heat rush to my face. "That has to be a mistake," my uncle said. But the lawyer calmly slid a document across the table. "Margaret Carter personally signed this will 2 years ago?" My father looked stunned. "You're saying my daughter gets everything because Daniel didn't show up?" Mr. Harrison nodded. "Yes." My hands started shaking. "Because I knew Grandma loved Daniel more than anyone. So why would she leave everything to me? Unless she already knew he wouldn't come." My uncle wasn't satisfied. "There must be more to it," he said. "No one writes a will like that for no reason." Mr. Harrison sighed slightly. "There is something else." Everyone leaned forward again. Margaret Carter also left a letter explaining the condition. He pulled a sealed envelope from his briefcase. On the front was written in careful handwriting, "To be read after my funeral." My heart tightened, because I recognized that handwriting instantly. Grandma's. The lawyer opened the envelope carefully. Inside was a single sheet of paper. He began reading. "If you are hearing this letter, it means Daniel's seat was empty." The room went completely silent. My father stopped breathing for a moment. Mr. Harrison continued. "I did not create this condition to punish him. I created it to give him one last chance." My throat tightened, because suddenly I understood. Grandma had believed he would come. The lawyer read on. "Daniel was the only person in this family who once sat with me when no one else did. When his grandfather died, he was just 16, but he visited me every Sunday. He listened to my stories. He fixed the porch light. He never rushed me. I felt tears forming. I remembered those days too. Daniel used to come every weekend. Until the fight happened." The lawyer continued reading. 10 years ago, something happened that broke our family. Words were said. Pride grew louder than love. And Daniel stopped coming." My father shifted uncomfortably, because everyone in the room knew that fight started between him and Daniel, not Grandma. The letter continued. "I tried to reach out many times. But sometimes the hardest thing for people to admit is that they miss someone." The room felt unbearably quiet. Even my uncle looked down. So I made one simple request. One seat. One moment. One chance to show up. My chest felt heavy now. If Daniel came to my funeral, it would mean he still cared. If he didn't— The lawyer paused briefly before finishing the sentence. Then I would know he had truly moved on. My father looked at the empty chair again. And for the first time that day, he looked ashamed. Mr. Harrison folded the letter slowly. "That concludes Margaret Carter's explanation." My uncle crossed his arms. "So Daniel loses everything because he didn't show up." The lawyer shook his head. "No." He looked at me. "He loses everything because he chose not to come." My phone buzzed again. Another message from Daniel. "How was the funeral?" My hands trembled slightly. I didn't know what to say. Because if he had walked through that door, just once, everything would have been different. But the story wasn't over, because Mr. Harrison wasn't finished speaking. "There is one final instruction," he said. Everyone looked up again. Margaret Carter asked that Emily make the final decision regarding the estate. My eyes widened. "What do you mean?" The lawyer met my gaze calmly. She wrote that the house money and property now legally belong to you. He paused. But she left one final note for you specifically. He handed me another envelope. My name was written on the front. Emily. My heart started pounding as I opened it. Inside was a short handwritten message. Only 3 sentences. But those sentences changed everything. And when I finished reading them, I realized Grandma had planned something far bigger than any of us understood. Especially Daniel. The message Grandma left for me had only 3 sentences. But those 3 sentences felt heavier than the entire will. My hands trembled slightly as I read them again. Emily, if Daniel didn't come, it means the pain between him and this family never healed. The inheritance is yours now, but what you do with it will reveal the kind of person you are. I swallowed hard. Then I turned the paper over. There was one more line written at the bottom. Sometimes love means giving people one last chance, even if they don't deserve it. The room suddenly felt smaller. Everyone was staring at me, waiting. My father broke the silence first. So he said slowly, I guess the house is yours now. My uncle forced a small smile. Looks like you got lucky. Lucky. That word felt strange, because this didn't feel like luck. It felt like a test. Mr. Harrison cleared his throat. Emily, he said gently, your grandmother trusted you to decide what happens next. I nodded quietly. But inside my mind, memories were rushing back. Daniel sitting with Grandma on the porch. Daniel fixing her broken fence. Daniel bringing her groceries every Sunday. He used to be the only one who came. Until the fight. 10 years earlier, I was 15 when it happened. The argument between my father and Daniel had started over something small. Money. My father accused Daniel of borrowing money from Grandma. Daniel said it was a gift. Voices got louder. Accusations got uglier. And then my father said something that shattered everything. You only visit her because you want her money. I still remember the look on Daniel's face. Shock. Hurt. Anger. And then he said something that no one in the family ever forgot. If that's what you believe, then I won't come back at all. And he didn't. For 10 years. But Grandma never stopped believing he would. She always set one extra chair at the table. She always asked about him, even when no one answered. I took a deep breath. Then I picked up my phone. Another message from Daniel. Emily seriously was the funeral today. My father noticed the phone in my hand. Is that him? I nodded. The room went silent again. Tell him he missed his chance, my uncle muttered. My father didn't say anything, but I could see the same thought in his eyes. I looked down at Grandma's note again. Sometimes love means giving people one last chance. My chest tightened, because I suddenly realized something. Grandma hadn't written this will to punish Daniel. She had written it to see what I would do, so I typed a message. My fingers hesitated for a moment. Then I sent it. Daniel, the funeral was today. 3 dots appeared almost instantly. Then his reply came, wait, what? Why didn't anyone tell me? I stared at the message for a long time, because the truth was, people had told him. He just never responded. Another message appeared. Emily, did she suffer? I felt tears forming. No, I typed back. She was peaceful. A long pause. Then the message that changed everything. I should have come. I showed the phone to Mr. Harrison. Can I ask something, I said? Of course. What happens if I give Daniel the inheritance anyway? My uncle jumped out of his chair. You can't be serious. My father looked stunned too. But the lawyer simply adjusted his glasses. Legally, he said the estate belongs entirely to you now. He paused. So yes, you could give it to him if you wanted. My uncle shook his head. After he ignored her for 10 years. But I wasn't listening anymore, because I remembered something else. Grandma once told me, people make mistakes, Emily, but regret is the heaviest thing a person can carry. I typed one more message. Daniel, Grandma left the house to me. The reply came quickly. That makes sense. Another message followed. I don't deserve anything from her. I stared at the screen. Then I typed the words that shocked everyone in the room. But I'm giving it to you? Gasps filled the room. Emily, my uncle shouted. But I ignored him. Because Daniel's reply appeared almost immediately. No, I can't take that. I smiled sadly. You're not taking it, I wrote. You're finally showing up. The phone stayed silent for almost a full minute. Then one final message appeared. Can I visit her grave tomorrow? Tears rolled down my cheeks. Yes, I typed. She would have liked that. Mr. Harrison watched quietly. Then he smiled softly. You know, he said, I think your grandmother expected this. I looked up. Why? He pointed to the empty chair in the corner. The seat wasn't just for Daniel. He paused. It was also for forgiveness. The next day, Daniel stood in front of Grandma's grave for a long time. He didn't say much. He just placed a small white flower on the stone. Then he whispered something so quietly that only I could hear it. I'm sorry. And in that moment, I finally understood Grandma's real inheritance. It wasn't the house. It wasn't the money. It was the chance to choose love instead of pride. Because sometimes, the greatest consequence isn't losing an inheritance. It's realizing you almost lost the chance to say goodbye. The end. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who still has time to show up for the people they love.